I bet you didn't know why your coffee now costs a latte. Remember when a cup of coffee used to be a simple pleasure, not a budget buster? Those were the days when you could enjoy a steaming cup without a second thought. It was a small, affordable luxury that fit easily into your daily routine. Those days seem long gone. Now it feels like every sip comes with a side of sticker shock. The price of your favorite brew has climbed steadily, making you wonder if it's worth the splurge. It's not just your imagination. Things really do cost more than they used to. From the grocery store aisles to the coffee shop counter, prices have been on an upward trajectory. That morning latte, your weekly groceries, even filling up your gas tank, the price tags keep creeping higher. It's a trend that's hard to ignore, affecting every aspect of our daily lives. You're working just as hard, but your money just doesn't seem to stretch as far as it used to. The paycheck that once covered all your needs now feels insufficient, leaving you to make tough choices. This, my friend, is the frustrating reality of inflation. It's a slow, almost invisible force that erodes your purchasing power over time. We're not talking about the price of a single item going up because of a bad crop or a sudden surge in demand. It's more pervasive than that. We're talking about a steady, across-the-board increase in the prices of goods and services. This kind of inflation affects everything from your morning coffee to your monthly rent. It's like the air is slowly leaking out of your tires, and you don't even realize it until you're riding on the rims. The gradual nature of inflation makes it easy to overlook until it becomes a significant burden. This insidious erosion of purchasing power is what we call inflation, and it affects us all. Whether you're a student, a professional, or a retiree, the impact of rising prices is felt across the board, making it a universal challenge we all must navigate. I bet you didn't know how inflation really works. Let's break down inflation in the simplest terms possible. Imagine you have $100 today. You can buy a certain amount of stuff with it, right? Now imagine that a year from now, that same $100 buys you noticeably less stuff. That's inflation in a nutshell. Your money is losing value over time. It's not that the prices of everything are going up at the exact same rate all the time. Some things might get more expensive faster than others, but overall the general trend is upward. The things you need and want are gradually becoming less attainable, even if your income stays the same. It's like running on a treadmill. You're putting in the effort, but you're not really getting ahead. I don't think people understand how we track inflation, so how do we even know how bad inflation is? We don't just go by gut feeling or anecdotal evidence. Economists have a fancy tool called the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, to measure the rate of inflation. Think of the CPI as a basket of goods and services that represents what the average consumer buys. This basket includes everything from food and housing to transportation and healthcare. Every month, economists track the prices of all these items and calculate how much they've changed compared to the previous month. The percentage change in the CPI is what we call the inflation rate. It's like taking the temperature of the economy and seeing if it's running a fever. You need to hear this if you're a consumer. Inflation isn't just one monolithic thing. It can manifest in different ways, each with its own set of causes and consequences. Let's break down the three main types of inflation. I don't think people understand what happens when there's too much money and too few goods. Imagine a popular toy everyone wants for the holidays. There's only a limited supply, but parents are flush with cash and willing to pay whatever it takes to get their hands on it. This is demand-pull inflation in action. When there's too much money chasing too few goods, prices rise. Think about what happened during the pandemic when governments pumped money into the economy and supply chains were disrupted. Suddenly everyone had more money to spend, but there weren't enough goods to go around, leading to a surge in demand-pull inflation. Next, we'll see what happens when production costs skyrocket. Now imagine the price of oil skyrockets because of a global shortage. Since oil is used in everything from transportation to manufacturing, the cost of producing and transporting goods also goes up. Companies then pass these increased costs on to consumers in the form of higher prices. This is cost push, inflation rising production costs pushing up prices. This can also happen if wages rise significantly. Companies may raise prices to maintain their profit margins, leading to a wage price spiral that contributes to inflation. I bet you didn't know about the wage price spiral. Let's say prices are rising due to cost push inflation. Workers feel the pinch and demand higher wages to keep up with the rising cost of living. Companies then raise prices even further to cover the increased labor costs, leading to a self-perpetuating cycle of rising wages and prices. This is built-in inflation. It's like a game of hot potato, where nobody wants to be left holding the potato of lower purchasing power. Each group tries to protect its own interests, but the result is a vicious cycle that can be difficult to break. What's something people don't know about inflation's winners and losers? Now let's move from consumers to borrowers. Inflation doesn't affect everyone equally. It creates a complex web of winners and losers, impacting various groups in different ways. Some people benefit from it, while others bear the brunt of its negative consequences. The effects of inflation ripple through the economy, touching every aspect of daily life. Let's see who comes out ahead and who gets left behind in the game of inflation, a game that can change the financial landscape for many. Consumers. For the most part, consumers are on the losing end of inflation. As prices rise, their purchasing power diminishes, making it harder to afford everyday necessities. As prices rise, their purchasing power diminishes. This means that the same amount of money buys fewer goods and services than before. They have to spend more to buy the same amount of goods and services, which can lead to difficult choices and sacrifices in their daily lives, leaving them with less money for savings or discretionary spending. This can affect their ability to save for the future or enjoy leisure activities. Savers. Inflation is also bad news for savers. If the interest rate on your savings account is lower than the rate of inflation, the real value of your savings is actually decreasing over time. If the interest rate on your savings account is lower than the rate of inflation, the real value of your savings is actually decreasing over time. This means that the money you have set aside is losing its purchasing power. The real value of your savings is actually decreasing over time. Your money is losing purchasing power even as it sits in the bank, making it harder to achieve your financial goals. Your money is losing purchasing power even as it sits in the bank. This can be particularly frustrating for those who are diligently saving for a big purchase or retirement. Borrowers. On the flip side, borrowers can actually benefit from inflation, especially if they have fixed-rate loans. This is because they are repaying their loans with money that is worth less over time, especially if they have fixed-rate loans. This is because they are repaying their loans with money that is worth less over time. As inflation rises, the real value of their debt decreases. This is because they are repaying their loans with money that is worth less over time. Inflation erodes the real value of their debt, making it easier to pay off. Inflation erodes the real value of their debt. This can be a significant advantage for borrowers, as it reduces the burden of their financial obligations over time. I bet you didn't know what fuels inflation. We've explored the different types of inflation, but what are the underlying causes that drive this economic phenomenon? Understanding these causes is crucial for both policymakers and consumers. Here are some of the key culprits that contribute to inflation in an economy. Increased money supply. When there's more money circulating in the economy, it can lead to inflation. This happens because more money in the hands of consumers increases demand for goods and services. This is based on the basic economic principle of supply and demand. When demand outstrips supply, prices naturally go up. If the supply of money outpaces the supply of goods and services, prices tend to rise. This imbalance can create a cycle of rising prices, making everyday items more expensive. Government policies. Governments can also contribute to inflation through their policies. Fiscal policies, such as tax cuts or increased public spending, can inject more money into the economy. For example, excessive government spending or printing of money can increase the money supply and fuel inflation. Monetary policies like lowering interest rates can also have a similar effect. External shocks. Sometimes external factors outside of a country's control can trigger inflation. These shocks can disrupt supply chains and production processes. These shocks can include things like natural disasters, geopolitical instability, or sudden surges in global commodity prices. Such events can lead to shortages and increased costs, which are then passed on to consumers. I bet you didn't know how much inflation affects your wallet. Inflation might seem like a complex economic concept, but it has real-world implications for all of us. Understanding inflation is crucial for managing your personal finances effectively. When you're aware of inflation and its potential impact, You can make more informed financial decisions. You can negotiate for higher salaries, explore investment options that outpace inflation, and adjust your spending habits to mitigate the effects of rising prices. By staying informed and proactive, you can navigate the challenges of inflation and protect your financial well-being.